Scrub Dog of Alaska by Walt Morey. 1. The whole mining community of Aurora named the pup. At first, when they were annoyed by something he'd done, they'd say, "That no-good scrub of Smiley Jackson's." But that was too long. They shortened it to "that scrub," which was the lowest form of no good, and Jackson agreed with them. Jackson considered himself an expert. He was choosing pups to build a new team. He raised, trained, and ran dogs in the Alaska sled dog races. He studied each carefully, idly fingering the ugly scar on his cheek, which pulled his lips upward into a gargoyle-like smile. He noted each pup's disposition, agility, alertness, and especially its courage. He'd already chosen the black pup Kino for his leader. But the wolf-gray scrub showed no promise that he would ever make a good sled dog. To Jackson, he wasn't worth even a bullet. He took an axe to do the job and approached quietly from the rear. Some instinct warned the pup. He glanced back and leaped sideways. The swing threw Jackson off balance, and he sprawled in the snow. The axe flew from his hands. The handle smacked the pup in the ribs, and he yelped in surprise and pain. Before Jackson could get up, the pup raced into the trees and disappeared. Jackson could easily have followed the pup and disposed of him. But now the dog had gone, he would no longer have to be fed. But now the dog was gone, he would no longer have to be fed. That was all that mattered. It was winter. In all probability, the pup would starve or freeze to death, or fall prey to some hungry predator. In fact, he might be dead by morning. It was 20 below now, and the temperature would plunge lower as the night advanced. But Jackson failed to take into account that there was wolf blood in this young dog's veins. The wild instinct for survival had been bred into him for generations. Now it came to the fore as the cold and hungry pup struggled off through the snow toward the cluster of houses a half-mile away. Within an hour, the pup found frozen table scraps in a garbage pile behind a house. They were hard to chew with his baby teeth, but he managed. At another house, he watched from the protection of a bush as a man hung a sack containing meat on a nail on his back porch. When the man disappeared inside, the dog crept forward and looked longingly up at the sack. The sweet odor of fresh meat hung on the frigid air. Saliva ran in the pup's mouth. He licked his lips hungrily. There was an empty box on the porch under the sink. He jumped onto the box and reared up against the wall, trying to reach the sack. His clawing at the wall brought an immediate rush of steps toward the door. He jumped from the box, fell clumsily, and rolled off the steps. He had barely scrambled into the inner gloom when the door opened. Feet tramped about in the snow. The man muttered to himself angrily and went back inside. The pup worked his way farther under the house and found warmth. The stove just over his head warmed the floor, which in turn brought warmth down to him. He spent a very comfortable night. But for the lucky accident of diving under the porch, Scrub might have frozen to death. The next morning he returned to Jackson's one-room cabin. Jackson was outside feeding the pups and saw him coming. He grabbed a stick and ran at him, shouting. Scrub fled back into the brush, by now ravenously hungry. He returned to Aurora and visited the garbage pile. This time there was no food. He wandered among the other houses, found garbage piles with a few bites of food, and eked out a slim meal. The day was biting cold. He went to the house where he'd spent the previous night. A man was outside, cutting wood. When Scrub approached, he picked up a stick, hurled it at him, and shouted angrily, "Get out of here! Beat it!" The stick missed. Scrub ran away again. He had learned the most important lesson in his survival. Man had to be avoided. He slunk about, searching for a warm place to hole up. He discovered another house he could get under. The hole was at the back, where there were no doors or windows to give away his approach. Being careful, he could come and go with little fear of detection. In succeeding days, Scrub found an old shed with a pile of dried grass in a corner. Best of all, he later stumbled onto an abandoned mine test hole. It was dark inside and the air smelled stale, but down in the earth he was completely protected from the weather. And man didn't come here. Food remained his biggest problem. Stealth and cunning were part of his heritage. Pup though he was, clumsy and awkward, necessity forced him to become sly and clever. In time, he learned to visit the garbage piles only at night. He learned that the back porches of houses were good places to watch. Housewives sometimes put hot dishes out to cool or to freeze, and his delicate nose led him unerringly. Some porches had plain wooden boxes that served as refrigerators in which food was kept fresh. Sometimes a box was not tightly closed. More often than not, he found it. Soon, Scrub was automatically blamed when food was missed or a food box was broken into. Often he was innocent. Other families had young dogs which ran free during their first months. They formed into a pack and stole whenever the opportunity arose. But since they were fed regularly, they were seldom blamed. Scrub grew surprisingly on his lean, uncertain diet. But he was never the fat, roly-poly pup the others were. Scrub's sides were thin, his thick gray coat matted. Young as he was, the wolf in him was becoming visible in his black masked face. His nose lengthened. His jaws became wider, showing the promise of tremendous crushing strength. His eyes changed to amber, and he had a wolf's trick of tilting his head down slightly and looking obliquely up at any object that caught his attention. His legs became longer, the bones heavier. His front feet seemed out of proportion to the rest of his body. He became particularly clever at dodging sticks or other missiles. Someone might have shot him, but he was still Smiley Jackson's property. Such an act might have aroused Jackson's hair-trigger temper. He was a vindictive man, and in this small community, no one wanted to risk his wrath. So they tolerated Scrub and ran him off whenever he approached. The teeth of every dog and the hand of every man, woman, and child in Aurora was set against him. Except one. David Martin was a young, slender boy about 14. He had dark eyes and straight black hair. His smooth skin was neither light or dark, but something of an in-between olive. He went to the little one-room school with the rest of the Aurora kids. After school, he hiked off alone through the settlement, carrying a lunch bucket and books. He entered a trail in the snow that led through the trees. The first time the boy came upon him, Scrub was trying to dig a rabbit from a burrow in the frozen earth. If he caught the rabbit, it would be his first food in several days. He was industriously tearing at the hard earth when he heard the crunch of snow and jerked his head up. The boy stood a few feet off. Scrub started backing away, prepared to run. He knew what to expect. He was ready to dodge the moment the boy's arm would draw back to throw. Instead, the boy spoke to him. "You look awful thin. I bet you're hungry." His voice was gentle and quiet. The dog stopped, ears pricked forward, listening. The boy advanced slowly, opening his lunchbox. He held forth a sandwich. "Here, I couldn't eat all my lunch." Scrub knew it was food, and saliva ran down his mouth. He licked his lips hungrily, but he could not let the boy come close. He kept backing away. The pack of free-running dogs, led by the black Kino, came trotting through the snow. They spotted Scrub and started forward on a run. Kino was in the lead. The boy snatched up a stick and Scrub bolted away. He glanced over his shoulder as he ran, ready to dodge when the stick was thrown. The boy was turned, facing the advancing pack. He hurled the stick at them. It caught Kino in the side and brought a yelp of surprise and pain. The black dog turned tail and raced back toward Aurora with the pack at his heels. Scrub stopped uncertainly. The boy came toward him again, holding out the sandwich. His voice was low and coaxing. "Come on. It's good. I'm not going to hurt you. Come on." Scrub listened, looking obliquely up at the boy. He wanted the food desperately, but he could not let the boy advance beyond a certain distance. He began backing off again. The boy stopped. "All right. I don't blame you for not trusting anybody here." He tossed the sandwich in the snow under the dog's nose. For a moment, Scrub hesitated, but the aroma of fresh food was too much. He grabbed it and gulped it down, watching the boy carefully. "You see, I don't want to hurt you," the boy said. "Why should I? I wish I had more to give you. Maybe I'll see you again. Goodbye." He disappeared among the trees. Scrub didn't see the boy for several nights. When he did, the boy had part of a sandwich and a couple of cookies for him. Again, he talked quietly, coaxingly, as he held out the food and tried to approach. "You remember me. I gave you a sandwich and chased the other dogs away so you could eat in peace. Here's some more. Come on, come and get it." Once again, Scrub could not let the boy advance too close. The boy finally gave up and tossed the sandwich and cookies into the snow. Again, he walked away into the trees. He walked away among the trees. Scrub saw the boy often after that, and more than once the food he received kept him from going hungry. He began to make a point of appearing somewhere near the trail at the edge of the trees where the boy was sure to see him. There was always food for him, and the boy continued to talk quietly. Then one night, the boy did not come. Scrub hung about the spot near the trail, day after day. He went into the trees where the boy always disappeared, but found nothing. Day after day he returned, sat in the snow beside the trail, and waited. He missed not only the food he'd come to expect, but the first faint feeling of friendship he'd ever known with a human. The dog in him craved this. A fresh fall of snow finally wiped out all sign of the trail. Then Scrub knew the boy was not coming and gave up waiting. He had to scrounge harder than ever for food now to fill the needs of his growing body. Gradually the days began to lengthen. The sun swung higher across the blue bowl of the sky. Its brilliance carried the first faint warmth of spring. A chinook blew up from the south and began biting into the snow blanket. The first gray-green patches of tundra appeared. Crocuses pushed through the melting snow and spread their bloom to a softening sky. Ptarmigans, rabbits, and weasels began to lose their white coats. A host of small animals came from burrows beneath the thinning snow and dashed about in a frantic search for food. They were happy to be out of their winter confines, into the wide, big world again. The river ice became scored and rotten. Water ran along either bank, beneath the ice and over its rough surface. Then one day, with a noise like thunder that brought all of Aurora racing to the river bank to view the spectacle, the ice began moving inexorably toward the distant sea. Birch buds burst along the edge of the woods, and the first leaves shone pale green and satiny smooth. Great V's of geese, ducks, and swans began passing over. At times the sky was alive with their talking. A cow moose emerged from the brush, followed by her spindly-legged calf. They made their way slowly to the ice-free river. Spring had come to the north. Scrub entered spring half-starved and ragged. The change of season brought no improvement in his condition. This was not altogether due to the people of Aurora, who hated him and drove him from their houses and garbage piles. The pack of free-running dogs had made life miserable by chasing him at every opportunity. They were worse than the coming of spring. They were bigger, more aggressive, and they were led by Kino. His special delight was harassing Scrub. Jackson planned to make Kino the lead dog of his new team. He was all black and sleek from being well fed. He was exceptionally strong and fast afoot, and he was a little older than Scrub. Kino and the others made a game of chasing Scrub and robbing him of any food he had found or managed to steal. Scrub hunted the nearby woods to add to his slim diet, but wild game was scarce this close to Aurora, and the pack was always hunting too. Several times Scrub had lain in the fringe of brush near Jackson's cabin and watched, drooling, stomach aching, as the musher fed his dogs. He had sneaked up to the cabin in the dead of night in the hope that some morsel had been missed, but Kino slept near the steps and sounded the alarm that brought Jackson cursing to the door with a gun. Twice he had shot at Scrub as the pup raced into the protection of the brush. Both times he missed. Most of Scrub's meager food came from prowling the yards and cabins of Aurora. When he found something, he'd slip into the woods where he could hide and eat in peace. Kino knew this and was constantly on the lookout for him. The moment he spotted Scrub with food, the race was on, with the whole pack streaming out behind Kino and urged on by anyone who happened to see it. "Take him! Go get him, Kino! Get the no-good thief!" they'd shout. Quite often, Scrub didn't make the protection of the trees and had to drop his precious food in order to get away. Kino and the pack would stop and devour what he had worked so hard to steal. This happened again and again during the summer, with the result that Scrub added very little weight and muscle at a time he should have been storing it up to see him through the coming winter. Then one day, Scrub stole a haunch of venison from a back porch and was slipping off toward the trees. The pack rounded the corner of the house, and Kino spotted him. Kino let out a bellow and gave chase. The pack followed, yapping and barking. Scrub dug out for the woods at full speed. Once there, he could dodge among the trees and try to lose them. But he was hampered by the size of the haunch, and Kino gained steadily. Scrub made the trees, but the black dog was so close that Scrub didn't dare slow up to dodge or twist. He fled straight away, trying to outrun them. Kino gained and soon was snapping at Scrub's flying heels. Scrub could have dropped the meat, raced on, and escaped, as he had done so many times, but he hadn't eaten for several days and was ravenously hungry. This time, when he knew he'd be caught, he dropped his prize and whirled, head lowered, teeth bared to fight. Kino piled straight into him, and both dogs reared on hind legs, teeth slashing. For a few seconds, the lighter, scrawnier Scrub actually held his own with Kino. Then the heavier dog's weight and strength bore him down. Kino straddled Scrub, teeth fastened to his throat. That was the signal for the pack to pile on. They buried Scrub beneath their weight. Now Scrub was fighting for his life. Somehow he twisted from Kino's jaws and with a mighty surge came to his feet, snapping right and left. Then the pack rolled over him again. Teeth tore at his thin body. Kino was at his throat again when blackness closed over him. A few minutes later, the pack trotted out of the woods, tails waving as if nothing had happened. Kino carried the remains of the haunch, which was his right as leader. The silence of death settled over the forest. In a small sunlit glade, the torn-up earth and still, mangled form of a wolf-gray animal was the only evidence of the savage battle that had been fought here. And that's the end of chapter 1.